Some of you have met Carly at Norwest, but others may not have. Now, Carly has extensive experience in workplace health and safety across diverse, high-risk and heavily regulated operations, both in Australia and internationally. You can see I've got two screens, so I'll just try and pull it over here a bit. Carly has worked for the Sibelco Group for the past 11 years, most recently in a dual role leading their global occupational health program, as well as being the safety and health lead for their Australian operations. Sibelco is a multinational industrial minerals, mining and processing business with their remaining Australian clay and mineral sands operation based in Queensland. So I'd really like you to, I'm going to hand it over to Carly because I know she's going to give us a great presentation. So I'll mute myself, but if anyone, as I said, has any queries, or just send me through on the chat. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll just share my screen and get the presentation up, and also let me know if there's any problems with that or any problems with my audio. Hopefully you can hear me okay. I'll just get the presentation up. There we go. Can everyone see that okay? Just maybe nod. I can see a couple of pictures here, so okay, great. Yeah, as Roxanne introduced me, thank you. I currently lead health and safety for Sibelco's Australian operations. I've actually stepped out of the global occupational health role now, as we're heading towards largely the closure of our business in Australia. Over the last 12 to 18 months, we've been in a process of divesting and closing and rehabilitating a lot of our operations in Australia, and we don't have much left now. As Roxanne mentioned, we have one clay operation in Western Queensland, and we are also actively rehabilitating the North Stradbroke Island mineral sand operation after we had a deadline to cease mining there at the end of last year. But we operate over 200 production sites globally, and we mine and process a really wide variety of industrial minerals. We had, up until 2 weeks ago, a large magnesia operation in Rockhampton, which we've sold. I mentioned mineral sand, but we also do a lot of silica for glass production and clay, as I mentioned. My presentation today is to share with you the details of a very serious incident that we experienced here in Australia a few years ago now. And while a lot of you on the call, I'm sure, are from a really diverse range of industries and may not have quite the same operations that we have, and we're also working under the resources regulator here in New South Wales, and perhaps you don't have experience with them directly as a regulator, but I think hopefully there's a lot of value for you all today in I think the learning from our incident and the risk associated with our incident is present throughout many industries and a lot of industries. I guess also our experience, it's not a complex incident, I guess, as well. As you'll see, it's quite a simple incident with some quite simple causes that I think, again, you would probably find in your own workplaces and could get some learning and experience from. And I guess also to the experience of our experience and sharing with you, I guess the process we've been through following in terms of, I guess, what we've learned through the industry and in completing an enforceable undertaking with the New South Wales Resources Regulator. As I mentioned at the Northwest Sydney presentation, I think it's actually quite a rare opportunity to be able to share the details of a serious incident like this openly. and transparently. I think any of you that have been involved with fatalities and serious incidents like this before would know that, I guess, the legal aspects that you need to juggle and those sorts of things often mean that you can't be as open and transparent with the details of an incident like this. So I think, yeah, it's quite a rare opportunity, I think, to share directly from our organisation to yours, our experience, and hopefully there's some value for you in I guess what we've experienced over the last few years. So principally, I'll be speaking about the risk of falls from mobile plant, and I think all of us are well aware of the significance of the risk of the operation of mobile plant and vehicles in all industries, and I guess the role that that activity plays in a huge number of the fatalities, workplace fatalities, and injuries that we see across Australia. I think we all know and recognise that mobile plant operation and vehicles are a significant risk area. But I do think that falls from mobile plant and falls from vehicles, and I'm talking about trucks, or particularly in our case, trucks, but there are others, I think is perhaps lesser known and maybe less addressed when we're addressing the risks of mobile plant. I think, we're often quite focused on pedestrian interaction and vehicle-to-vehicle contact, avoiding collision and that sort of thing. Our workers needing to access mobile equipment and egress from mobile equipment and do maintenance on mobile equipment, and the risk of falling, I think is perhaps one that we don't focus on as much. So, so the purpose of my presentation today is to, I guess, raise awareness of that particular risk with respect to the incident that we experienced at one of our operations. Yes, and then just within the last few weeks, or this is late February, you can see that, so this is a notification that came through from the New South Wales Resources Regulator towards the end of February. We had another incident within our industry of an operator falling from a haul truck when the handrail gave way, and you can see here that he's unfortunately suffered a broken wrist and broken leg. So you can see that they're still happening, incidents like ours, still very recently, as recently in fact as February. Our incident that I'll be speaking to you about occurred, it was early 2016. So you can see we're 4 years on from this incident and still actively working on an enforceable undertaking and still actively working on the outcomes of this incident. So again, probably no surprise to all of you on the call, I guess, how long these processes are and what the length of the impact of such incidents on businesses. In early 2016, we had a mobile plant operator at our Saltash plant, which I'm sure you guys being up in the Central Coast perhaps know where that is in the Port Stephens area up there. It's quite a small operation, relatively. It's a sand mining and processing plant for glass production. We had a mobile plant operator at this site suffer quite serious head injuries in a fall from the articulated dump truck you see in front of you in the photograph here. As you can see in the photograph, the dump truck is what we call a Volvo A380, and it's about a 1994 model, so very dated, quite a old vintage truck. But in saying that, I think it's quite common within our industry, but also within construction and others to be seeing what I would call legacy vehicles like this, like legacy fleet and older model vehicles still doing the rounds. I see them all the time. I see, I drive past construction sites here in Sydney and see vehicles exactly the same as this. I think it's pretty rare for businesses to have nice, new, shiny, $1 million mobile plant fleets in actual fact. So I do think this is quite relevant. So this truck was being transferred from one of our other operations in Western New South Wales, so out past Mudgee, sort of in between Mudgee and Orange. We had a limestone quarry out there at the time, and it had gone into care and maintenance, this site, so we're transferring this truck from that quarry to the Saltash site. And as you can see here, it was loaded onto what we call a low loader or a float for road transport from the quarry to Saltash. And this was the float, the low loader that it was loaded onto was operated by a contractor. So we'd engaged a contractor to do this for us. It's not something we do internally. So at the time of the incident, the contractor had driven from Mudgee to Port Stephens and had arrived at the site. And he was escorted onto the site by the site manager. So the site manager, I guess, directed him to follow him in his light vehicle to park up in the location that you see here. The contractor had got out of his truck and had started to, remove the chains and flags and all of those sorts of things that are, used to secure the haul truck when it's being transported by road. So he was sort of just started doing his thing under the supervision of the site manager. The operator, so the operator who would come to be injured at the time, he was actually in the lunchroom. He was on a lunch break and in the crib room, and he saw the truck arrive and came over to the work location and had a conversation with the site manager, and he got up into the cabin of the truck. Now, he got up on the opposite side to what you can see here. You're actually looking at what we call the offside. So the driver's side, what we call the driver's side access, is actually the other side. So he got up on that other side to access the cab. And he did that to, I guess, have a look at the controls and have a look at whether... So the topic of conversation was how similar it was to another truck that we had on site, which was in fact identical. So I think this is a good point as well, is that he was familiar with a truck like this and almost identical to this. He was an experienced operator as well. He'd worked with us for a very long time and had operated mobile equipment with us for a very long time. So once he'd inspected the controls in the cabin, he got down from that driver's side to come across to the offside that you can see in front of you. But an important point I'd like to raise here is that he crossed across to the offside between the tray and the cab. So he didn't get down, all the way down and walk all the way around. He came down the ladder and stairs on that driver's side and crossed through between the cabin and the tray. That's not, I guess, usual practice. And in speaking to the team on site after the incident, they assured me that wasn't usual practice. But I do think this is probably because of the unique circumstances, being on a float and sort of being in the process of readying it for offloading, perhaps drove that behaviour to get across to that offside. I should note that the injured operator doesn't have memory of the incident. So these sorts of questions around why you did things certain ways, we actually don't know. It is kind of conjecture. So yeah, we haven't obviously been able to ask him those things. He doesn't remember the incident and doesn't remember the day of the incident. But we do have, what we do have is CCTV footage of the incident, which it informs a lot of what I know and what we know of the incident. So he crossed across to that offside, and he did that to push out that offside wing mirror. So when you're transporting, you know, obviously a machine like this by road, they had pulled in both side mirrors for road transport. So he yeah, got up onto that offside, and there's a bit of a platform there you can see near the top of the red arrow, essentially. He pushed out that side mirror, and he turned to come back down, and he had, yeah, I guess just taken that first step, and when he fell, and to me, from the video, it just looks to me really like he loses balance. He doesn't really sort of trip, and he doesn't, yeah, I guess the best way for me to describe it is that he sort of looks like he loses balance and he falls outward from this top platform, falls forward outward from this top platform. He was wearing a hard hat, but that, as often does in these falls, it dislodged during the fall, and didn't offer him any protection at all from the impact. Where it's parked up there is actually hard sand. It looks like sand because it is sort of covered by a thin layer of sand, but in actual fact it is bitumen or hard sand. So when he fell, as you can see, it's a height of around or just short of 3 meters. His head struck the ground, and in the fall he suffered a fractured skull and jaw and a brain hemorrhage. No one actually saw the actual fall, so the site manager at the time was on the other side of the truck, and the contractor was sort of up the front of his truck doing his thing up there. So no one actually saw him fall, but heard it and came running very quickly to his aid. And he was given first aid treatment by his colleagues. And in actual fact, it's a very small site. As I said, it's really only a crew of, say, like 10 to 15 people. And it was just on shift changeover. So I think it was around 1 o'clock, or just short of 1 o'clock. So in actual fact, both shifts were on site, ready to sort of change over. So essentially all of his colleagues were there and responded, giving first aid and I guess calling emergency services and enacting the site emergency response plans. The paramedics responded within 15 minutes. We were lucky enough that there was actually, so not an ambulance, but like your road paramedic was close by and was able to respond quickly. That was the first on scene. But then we later had, you know, the full ambulance crew arrive. They provided him on-site treatment, and it in fact took quite a long time to be able to stabilise him for road transport to John Hunter Hospital. And I guess being familiar with the area, you probably know that John Hunter is actually quite a way from Saltash. I think it's maybe 40 minutes by road normally. I'm sure an ambulance does it much quicker. But yeah, it is quite a distance. So they did work for quite a long time to stabilise him, to be able to transport him. And in fact, I do think we are lucky that he was able to be stabilised and make it off site. I think the likelihood of perhaps him passing away on site was very high. He underwent emergency surgery that night at John Hunter to relieve brain swelling. They actually removed a portion of his skull to remove brain swelling. He was in sort of an induced coma for quite a long time. and he underwent secondary surgery for that brain hemorrhage in the weeks following. And I'm sure, as you can imagine, at Sibelco, I think none of us slept that night. We quite expected him to also not make it through that night, and not make it through the weeks that followed, to be honest. But we're very, very lucky that he did. He pulled through, and it was long and lengthy recovery, but he did recover well enough to begin rehabilitation as both an inpatient and outpatient at the John Hunter Brain Injury Unit for quite a long time. Unfortunately, he was never able to return to work. His permanent injuries are such that he can't return to his pre-injury duties and to this sort of work. He continues to suffer, ongoing memory issues, as I said, hearing loss, and other, permanent effects of his brain injuries. So following this incident, I should just mention one more thing while you're looking at the photographs, because it's quite important as we move through. You'll see on this offside, there's obviously no handrail or physical barrier on this offside, which is the obvious thing. On the driver's side, I should mention that there is. The site at out near Mudgee had installed a handrail on that driver's side, but a vehicle of this vintage had neither. So when it rolled off the production line, in 1994, it did not have handrails on either side. So at some point, the previous site had identified that as an issue and had made the call to install a handrail on that driver's side, but hadn't done so on this offside. Their, risk assessment had decided that because of the infrequent, nature of accessing this offside, they determined that, they never need to get up there. They might need to get up to sort of maintain this sort of filter on this side here very occasionally, but if they needed to, they would do that, with their usual sort of access platforms and other things that they had available to them on site. In terms of the causes of the incident, as I said, it's not complex. It's quite simple, in fact. And this actually comes from the New South Wales Resources Regulators investigation. It's quite a lengthy investigation report that is actually publicly available on their website if you'd like to read the full details of it. But I've just chopped out this section, which is really what they call the 4 key performance shaping factors as contributors to the incident. That's what the PSF acronym means there. So you can see it's the design and modification of the plant itself. So as I said, the design being what the access systems and fall protection equipment fitted or not fitted to it is like. But we had identified the risk of falling from the dump truck, or the site had, and also corporately, we had been working on, unfortunately and frustratingly, had been working on falls from mobile plant for quite a long time, quite a few years. We had been significantly focused on our logistics carriers and things like that. So, our tankers and things that transport our product and contractors that do that, and implementing controls for those activities. But we had been looking at our on-site equipment as well, and implementing controls for that. As I said, he had been trained and he was competent as a mobile equipment operator. But I guess at the time of the incident, that I guess the working at heights controls and the training that he had wasn't implemented during this particular activity. This third one, normalisation of the risk, is a really key one I want to reinforce with you today. One aspect when I was speaking to the team following the incident, they repeatedly reinforced with me that they didn't see this activity as being any different to normal mobile equipment operation. So they operate mobile equipment all day, every day, you know, haul trucks, forklifts, loaders, you name it, they do it. But I guess this activity of transporting a haul truck on a low loader wasn't something they did. It was new, it was different. But they really didn't see it to be different. They didn't really see that it was any, that, you know, to me, it's quite clearly non-routine. But for them, you know, they really didn't see that it was any different to, you know, their day-to-day mobile equipment activity, which I think, so the regulator has also said this normalisation of the risk, it's something they've picked up on. I think this is a key message for you today, because I think this is quite common. And our risk management practices. So I guess, you know, the practice of assessing a non-routine task like this before commencing work. Sibelco obviously has a process and an expectation for this that we thought was well implemented. But in fact, on the day, this process wasn't implemented. They didn't stop prior to commencing offload of the haul truck to, you know, assess the risk. And perhaps if we had have done that risk assessment process, they would have identified that the need to climb up on that right offside of the dump truck and push out that wing mirror and perhaps identify a safe way of doing it in the absence of the handrails on the truck. And I guess this is quite common throughout these incidents that we're seeing throughout the New South Wales mining industry. As I said, there's been many over the recent years. Not only ours, but it's there has been a number within the New South Wales mining industry, and there's a list of, I guess, there for you of some common contributing factors to these incidents. Some also found in ours, but also found in some of the others. So as you can see, the condition and design of the access systems that are on this mobile equipment, and this means not only the handrails and grab rails, but also the condition and design of the stairs and step configurations. An interesting observation that was made to me about our truck from a mobile equipment expert, I'll just flick back, is you've got on this offside, you've kind of got this combination of a ladder and a stairs. So if someone intuitively, you know, you use a ladder differently to how you use stairs, you know, behaviourally, you know, this almost sort of configuration lends itself to, I mean, technically someone's got to start off using it like a stairs and then turn around and use it like a ladder. I mean, that's not practical in terms of behaviour and how you access mobile equipment. So just something to think about. All mobile plant is different, how it's designed and the age of it, and also the makes and models that are out there. All the configurations are different, but I guess think behaviourally about when you look at something like that, how someone would actually access it and access it safely. What systems of work are employed to undertake things like maintenance? So this is a really key one. Usually in a day-to-day situation, you know, putting aside our activity, usually the guys that are getting up on these parts of mobile plant are your maintenance people. So what do they need to access and how are they accessing it? There are things like, you know, mobile platforms and these fall arrest trailers and things that you can get to do these things safely, but really think about whether that system of work is practical, whether it's in use, and the availability and how it's applied. And sorry, that's that third point there. How work is supervised, how we're identifying hazards and assessing the risk of falls. And obviously, and I'll speak about this last point in a bit more detail in the next slide. I guess the laws, standards, guidelines, codes of practice that apply to access systems on mobile plant are many, and particularly in New South Wales mining, and in mining generally, but it applies equally, I guess, to construction and and other industries, there is quite a lot to be aware of, and I would share with you that we at Sibelco, I think we relied quite heavily on the site and the site managers to be aware and across this amount of detail and this very technical knowledge that's required to understand what the laws and standards and guidelines are that apply to something like mobile plant. You know, we don't have a huge internal engineering team or an engineer at every site that can do this, and your workplaces are probably very similar. So, you know, is it realistic for these people to really be across the quantity of standards and technical guidelines that are out there, and how can we help, I guess, with that problem? And I guess just by way of demonstrating that, this is the list of compliance information that's available for managing the risk of falls for mobile plant in New South Wales mining. There's probably more, but these are the key ones, really. You've obviously got your, you know, your regulation and code of practice for workplace health and safety generally. But in mining, we have these mining design guidelines. You can see that MDG 15 there, which is really kind of the Bible for mobile equipment design. We've also got a raft of Australian standards here. I will highlight that following our incident in 2016, it was recognised that, so this one I've crossed out here, this 1991 Australian standard, following our incident, the standards committee responsible and experts responsible for this one met and did quite a lot of work, as you can see, to then release a new updated Australian standard, which is the one below it, the AS 5327. So if anyone, I'm not sure if anyone on the call works in in industry relevant to this, but just to highlight to you, if you weren't aware, that this new Australian standard was released late last year for earth moving machinery access systems. Yeah, I came across one of the guys that had been working on this standards committee and driving this this new Australian standard at a seminar late last year, and it was a surprise to me to know that, I mean, our incident was really a key driver or a bit of a watershed for and what we learnt following, a bit of a I guess a key driver for updating this Australian standard. Because prior to that, you know, there were, I guess, there was some information missing from it and the mining design guideline that drove organisations like us to then look to Australian standards for fixed plant for guidance. And as you can see, as I'm sure you are aware, that's a problem in itself. If you're trying to apply a fixed plant standard to mobile plant, you know, it doesn't translate perfectly. But this is what organisations like us were having to do, and in some cases are still having to do, to try and find the answers. Yeah, is kind of weeding our way through this long list of standards that are out there. I guess my message to you is the challenge. I don't have the answer either, but it is a challenge to be able to be across everything that's required for every make and model of mobile plant that's out there. So yeah, following our incident, we entered into an enforceable undertaking with the New South Wales Resources Regulator. There's quite a few projects that we're doing as part of that, and we're nearing the end. But some of which you can see on the screen here, or the outcomes we were looking for, is what's on the screen here. We provided quite a significant donation to the John Hunter Brain Injury Unit to help upgrade their facilities there. We've been providing internships to engineers from the University of Newcastle in the area of safety and plant. We have completed third-party audits on our mobile plants, And also we've committed to, I guess, sharing the learning from our incident with industry, which is part of the reason I'm here today presenting to you, is to, I guess, speak at seminars and forums like this to share, raise awareness of the risk, and I guess also share the learning and detail of this incident. The enforceable undertaking itself has been challenging. It's been a lot of work. It's been lengthy. I think, so the incident occurred early 2016. The regulator's investigation of the incident took a bit over a year. And then the process of negotiating and agreeing to an undertaking at the same time prosecution commenced, but was then stopped when we agreed to an undertaking. That took, I think, a year almost. And now to actually complete the undertaking has been, I think we're almost sort of 18 months now. So I guess you can see how long the process is following an incident like this. It's, there's a lot of work involved and takes a lot of time. I would highlight that an enforceable undertaking is by no means an easy way out in terms of like cost or time or resources. The idea, I guess, is, and definitely from Sibelco's experience, the idea is that that time and resources and cost, I guess, goes into far more proactive activities with a lot more benefit than, going and paying a whole heap of legal fees and going through a court process. So that's definitely the aim of enforceable undertakings, and it's definitely been our experience at Sibelco as well, is that the benefits have been far greater for us and for the industry at large. One of the activities we had to complete, or we have completed as part of the undertaking, is an educational video on this particular risk with respect to mobile plant. I'm going to try and play it for you. It's publicly available on our website, but we'll also provide the link to it as part of Roxanne's material when she sends it out after the meeting. But I'll just try and play it for you. I hope it works, including audio and everything.
There's no audio, Carly.
Sorry?
There's no audio. Yeah.
Okay, it seems there's no audio. Is that the case? Okay. Well, maybe I'll stop it there then, because there's probably not much point if you can't hear it. And I don't know how to get the audio through. But I'll just speak over the top of it then if there's no audio. So yeah, the purpose is really just to share, I guess, the risk and the outcomes that could be experienced through these types of incidents. and as well as some of the technical requirements for preventing falls on mobile plants. So we developed this in conjunction with the regulator or in collaboration with the regulator. And as I said, it is available on our website, and we'll provide the link with the presentation material afterward. So that's our incident. Roxanne, I don't know if there's any questions or that you can relay to me, or if anyone wants to jump in and ask them.
There's no questions come through on the chat box. Does anyone want to put their hand up or send through a question that they may have? Hopefully this video will be sent to you. The PowerPoint presentation or the call will be sent. It's been taped, and we can send that over with an extra connection to this video. But is there any questions that people may have of Carly? No hands up? I know some of you don't have that.
What we're also hoping to do in the next few weeks to go alongside the video on our website is, and perhaps I can forward to Roxanne to send to the two groups, is kind of like summarising my presentation into maybe a 2 to 3 page document that could support people in delivering like a toolbox talk, or to give further context to the video and delivering the video to their workplaces. So we're going to develop that and make that available too, is the plan at the moment. So yeah, if you're working in a workplace that could benefit from the use of the video, we can provide this supporting material to go with it as well.
We have one question here. Did the undertaking take time from your normal duties, and did you get extra resources?
Definitely extra resources in terms of budget. So it had a very clear budget, which was a commitment to the regulator, is that, you know, we commit to spending a particular budget, and it was all well costed and has been well funded. So there's been absolutely no issue from a funding perspective, but definitely in terms of resources, absolutely it's been taken over a large part of my what would be my normal job for the last 18 months, 2 years. And I have heard from other businesses that are doing these sorts of enforceable undertakings, and much bigger businesses than Sibelco, they all say that, yeah, you absolutely need some quite dedicated project management. It is it's obviously a quite critical project. It's a legal requirement that we've committed to, and yeah, it does really help to have some dedicated project management to it. Yeah, but absolutely it's taken away a lot of time from what my usual duties would be, that's for sure.
Carly, has this helped the business overall? Has it not just taken this little one incident, but it's moved offshore to the other sites, or?
Yeah, so anything we've developed and shared within Australia, we've also done with our global business. Yeah, so any of the communications, the video, the safety alert. So while obviously some of the Australian legal specific requirements or standards, yeah, are not necessarily transferable to Europe, for example, who have their own mobile equipment standards and things. I think what's been key for our wider business has obviously been the risk itself, and learning from learning from our incident to ensure that we don't have this happen at any of our other sites globally. So yeah, I guess it's applying their own local standards and things, but yeah, to ensure that they're compliant. It'll be different to Australia, but yeah, I guess ensuring that we've got the controls in place globally to prevent this happening anywhere else.
Well, if there's no more questions, on behalf of everyone here and those that are going to receive this presentation later, thank you very, very much. I think, as Ali said, it's very beneficial, and these experiences can be shared. I thought Michelle, you're online. I was wondering from an inspectorate point of view, how are you finding people complying with or working with the enforceable undertakings? Can I put you on the spot, Michelle, or she's not?
No, that's fine. Can you hear me?
Not very well. Can you speak up a little louder or get closer to the mic?
Yep. We've got obviously a dedicated team that looks after enforceable undertakings, and I know that the people that work in that team, I think they're really good to talk to, and I think that they have a real appreciation for the amount of effort that goes into doing an enforceable undertaking. And I think that some of the work that some of the sites that have been involved in enforceable undertakings that have done over the last couple of years has really been amazing, and it's great to see that it's actually forming a big body of really some great safety practice. If you look not only at the enforceable undertakings on the Safe Work New South Wales webpage, but also in particular Queensland has a really good amount of information, but also some other sites in international jurisdictions where they've piloted more this form of restorative justice, and some of the outcomes and some of the quite innovative responses to some incidents. I think it's created some excellent resources if you go and have a look at the work that some of those sites have done. So it's very, very worthwhile checking out, and a lot of them make for good case studies as well, because they'll have the incident and then they'll have the response to it as well. So they're great for toolbox talks as well.
Yeah, we've definitely found, well, I guess from the organisational perspective that, yeah, we, I guess, feel quite positive about the whole process. You know, while it's lengthy and, you know, time consuming, I mean, we have had this incident, and we need to do the work that's involved following. But I think on the whole, Sibelco feels really positive about the process and the outcomes of the process, and I guess the positive contribution we can make to what would otherwise perhaps, as I said, just be like a lengthy prosecution process and legal fees and you know, don't get me wrong, I think there's many cases where prosecution is absolutely the right way to go for some instances, but I think in other instances, you know, this process of I guess dedicating time and funds to projects that have really positive outcomes for the industry, yeah, I really support it very highly, and our personal experience here has been that it's a positive one, and we've really seen the benefits.
Mute myself.
Oh, you're on mute.
Yeah. Look, Kelly, thank you so much. I thoroughly enjoyed that. I enjoyed it when I saw it face to face, and we had a lot more interaction. This is just a little bit challenging, but it's certainly been very helpful. So thank you very much to you. Really appreciate it. Just for everybody else, for those that came in a bit later, I think the decision moving forward with the safety group, Central Coast and Norwest, is that we combine them and just have one meeting a month, and we will have one, maybe two speakers, but one speaker a month, and until we get back to normal life, whatever that's going to look like and whenever that's going to happen. If you have any issues with that, please let me know. Otherwise, I'll take it that we go ahead with that. Yeah. Has anybody got any questions that they would like to ask anyone in the group, or Carly or Michelle or anyone else, or they have queries about something that's happening with them at this point in time? No? No. An answer came there, none. So we'll leave it at that. Thank you, everybody. It's so much better, this one, than last week. Last week was a total disaster, but this one is fantastic. So it was great to see you all, see your smiling faces. Some of you are hiding because you're having a bad hair day or whatever. So again, thank you, Carly, and thanks, everybody. Okay, bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Cheers.